behind it.
No, I got.
Why don't you let me see that?
No.
Let me see it.
No.
Come on, we'll do an interview.
Touch my camera. Asher, stop this! I said, give it back.
We are talking the found footage movie Altar. This is from 2016 and directed and written by Matt Sconce. And this movie tells the story of a group of young adults, I think they're kind of ex-college friends, getting together to go to a camping expedition. Now at the beginning of the movie we actually see there's quite a lot of them. 3 cars worth in fact, but it focuses on one car's worth of people as they end up having car trouble and break down and are separated from the rest who kind of go on ahead and end up in the wrong site. However, this site is near to a mysterious altar that seems to have some kind of mystical significance, and not only that, there is a seemingly somewhat psychotic guy trying to keep people away from this altar. Now what will happen, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about what works. So a found footage movie, this one honestly is somewhat of a typical kind of found footage film. You know, it starts off exactly how you'd kind of expect with, you know, introductions to the people. Don't get much kind of action until really the end. So, you know, if you are a fan of that type of, you know, somewhat standard style found footage movie, you may want to kind of check it out. I have to say, I think the idea here of finding just some mysterious altar and no one knows what it's for, it's not really ever explained, but I actually think that works in the movie's favour. I mean, you're able to kind of gather certain kind of clues about possible kind of mystical significance and what's it protecting and things like that, but it never really goes any way explaining properly about what it's actually for, what it's actually meaning to be worshipping or keeping at bay, and who this guy is really, who is trying to keep people away. But I do think it adds an element of the unknown. So if you look at it from the point of view of the characters stumbling across this, you know as much as them, because you're not going to know everything. You know, it only gives you as much information as the characters are in the movie. So I do think that has a somewhat of an air of a mysterious kind of feel to it, because you feel like you're there with the characters in the kind of the unknown, not really understanding what it all kind of means and things like that. So I have to say as well, I think the actual cast do a fairly good job here. There is one point of note. There is a character called Bo, who is primarily the guy who holds the camera, who we are led to believe is on the autism scale. And I've seen a lot of criticism about his character because he's so, air quotes, whiny. But I can understand that, because looking at it just as a kind of like a character who might sort of grate on people's nerves, I understand why people might say that. But I gotta say, I actually thought the concept of this like younger lad, he's like the younger brother of one of the girls that are going there. I thought he did a reasonable job, acting wise, I will say. And I think the cast do a kind of a reasonable job in generally terms as well. I have to say as well, as annoying as people might find this character who's on this autism scale, the conceit here is his kind of safety mechanism, because he's so anxious, is this camera. So he's kind of like always holding this kind of camera and filming things. That's almost like a kind of psychological barrier between him and the real world. So it's a good conceit for why this is always being filmed, because this young lad, he's kind of using it as a kind of psychological crutch, really, to distance himself from reality. So, from a psychological perspective, I actually thought it was quite clever and a good reason why, a character would be filming in these kind of situations. On the flip side, as I say, people find his character clingy and whiny and annoying, but, I can understand that criticism, because he does come across like that, but I think if you understand it in the context of the character they are trying to portray, I think it's a fairly good job in acting terms. And of course his sister is super kind of protective over him, which you'd probably expect, and he's kind of doesn't ever really want to leave her side and things. So despite the fact that I think I kind of understand that criticism. I thought it was actually fairly kind of like clever. But I feel like I'm probably one of the only people who would say that, because I like the idea of why they did it, but I think just on a kind of more of an aesthetic level, it can come across as possibly a little bit grating. Yeah, but I thought the actual acting and stuff was all pretty good. And the other thing I thought was reasonable with this movie is it straddles a good mix between that kind of shaky kind of cam that you'd expect from a found footage movie to being quite clear. I mean, I never really felt like I couldn't see what was kind of going on. You know, some found footage movies, they're just all over the place, you can't really see. This one I felt actually, it does enough to kind of like make it feel like there's a guy with a kind of just a camera holding it around, but you never really feel like you can't really see what is kind of going on and things like this for the most part. Now, I do have a couple of critiques with the kind of the found footage concept, which we'll come into. But I have to say as well, I actually quite liked the sequences that surrounded this altar. I mean, the altar looks a little bit new, shall we say. It doesn't really look like it does on the poster art, if we're being honest. It looks a little bit kind of like it's recently been constructed with glowing kind of plastic stones. But, I still thought it had quite a kind of spooky ambience. And as I said, it goes well with the fact that we don't really know what's going on. But there are a couple of, I think, reasonably kind of creepy moments within this movie. Okay, so let's transition to now what doesn't work. Unfortunately, this movie, I think it cracks the conceit of having a found footage to a point in a number of ways. Now, if you can imagine this is a real life scenario, when someone is holding a camera and you're having a conversation with someone in front of the camera, like you can see me. Now, if this was real life, I wouldn't be talking to the camera like I'm looking at it now I am now. I would be talking to the person behind it, holding the camera, so you would see my eyes going behind the camera, so to speak, like I am now. But that's not what happened in this movie. Everyone, whenever they're talking to someone, is looking into the camera. So it doesn't really feel like that's like a kind of a real life scenario and things like this. There's a kind of a sequence at the beginning, like a prologue, where we have a different couple coming across this altar. And it just seems a little bit conceited at times. We have a guy literally coming out of the shower with a GoPro on his head and answering the door. There's like, there's how this like, why was this guy wearing a GoPro in the shower? It's not even if he was having a shower with his partner, he was just in the shower. And then he kind of goes to the door of this GoPro, this kind of stranger who's the one that kind of warns people off going in the area. He just knocks the door and says, "Oh, don't go to this, don't go to this on this hike." How do you know these people are going on a hike? How do you know who they are and what room they're in? So there's a few kind of conceits here that I feel are a little bit kind of dumb. We see, for example, in that same prologue, we see our couple earlier in the evening, and it's pouring down of rain. It's absolutely pouring down of rain. And then we're meant to believe later on that evening, when it's kind of night time, we see them hiking and it's just snow. Now, snow wouldn't look like that after kind of like heavy rain. I don't think, at least anyway. It kind of looks like it's undisturbed snow. So, it clearly looks like it's been filmed on kind of 2 different days. Because of the snow would be kind of a little bit kind of have evidence of the rain and things like that. So it's not exactly kind of presenting a realistic kind of portrayal of, I would say, what would happen in a kind of found footage scenario. Unfortunately, there's just a few things that kind of burst the illusion, so to speak. Like I said, the altar itself, again, I think it looks like it's too new and too kind of recently kind of constructed, and these blue sort of glowing stones look a little bit like this, like they're kind of plastic lights and things. So yeah, there's a couple of instances again where the aesthetics of it let it down. And I will have to say, although I understand the reasons for this Bo character, who's this guy with autism, and I actually personally kind of like the inclusion of it, because I understand it makes sense to the story. Yeah, a lot of criticism has been levied at this one from what I've read, because they find that character so irritating. So possibly other people, you might find this character irritating as well. Not a lot happens, if we're being honest. The bulk of the running time is kind of tromping around the woods and things like that. Of course we have personal drama, of course we have kind of love triangles and things like that to kind of stretch out the running time. And I don't really feel like it's a particularly strong payoff. We do see a little bit of kind of supernatural elements towards the end, but I feel it could have gone a little further with that. Well, I think what we do get, they've not gone quite far enough, I feel, to make a really solid kind of ending to this movie. So overall, I don't think it's as bad as maybe some people say, but I would say it's not a particularly strong found footage movie. It's maybe a little lackluster, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. But I'll say it's slightly below average. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.